5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And it's live.
This is Leicester Till I Die TV. Watch and subscribe on YouTube and listen on your podcast platform.
Good morning. Well, I say good, or it's afternoon now, technically. Good may not be the word, but good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, goodbye, hello. Wherever you are in the world, one of those will apply to you. This is LTID TV, and this could get very, very interesting. It's a debate with a bit of a difference, because I am saying that the winner will be whoever gets two knockdowns or submission. In the red corner, ooh, boo, we've got Locks, who will be coming in and saying that he doesn't think that Top is fit to run the club. And in the blue corner, we have got Craig, who says, no, look, he's earned the right, he should still be there. And as I've put up there, you know, we have to be careful what we wish for. What are your thoughts? Please add them into the chat. Keep them respectful, please. No calling people or anything like that. We're all supporters of the same club. Let's keep it polite. But do join in the chat. We'll get as much of that up as we can. If you're watching on catch up, thank you very much. Please put your comments in below. And if you are listening via your favourite podcast platform, thank you for lending me your ears. And if you are joining us and you aren't following Craig, just follow @CraigBird on Twitter, X, whatever it's called these days. And Locks, of course, great channel, new channel, but great channel. It's going great guns, blue tinted glasses. Do check that out on YouTube. The link is in the description below for both of those. But look, we are here. We are going to have the chat. I'm maybe putting it off. No, I'm not actually. Luke is in. Hundreds of millions in players going for nothing. Abysmal management by bringing in Cooper. And even more erroneous was how long it took to sack Rodgers. Top is out of his depth. Don't sit on the fence there, Luke. You go for it. And Michael says, Top, Cooper and Andrew Neville need to go. It's the first time I've actually heard anybody mention Andrew Neville, not mention, what's he called? Oh, Goodkin, that's it. Leicester City, again, if Cooper has gone in the next few hours, if Cooper isn't gone in the next few hours, then Top needs to go. Look, I'm not used to doing shows at this time in the morning. I'm still asleep. Luke Locks, meanwhile, has done two. This is his second show of the morning, so we're his sloppy seconds. Right, and Michael, can I just say, keep it polite, mate, otherwise you're not going to get your comments up at all. This is a game of two halves. Gentlemen, hey, it worked. Good morning. Good morning, Craig. Good morning, Locks.
Good morning.
Afternoon.
Oh, indeed it is. Like I say, I'm not a morning person. I accuse Craig of not being. How do you do these early morning shows, Locks? I don't know.
Yeah, not very well, mate. Not very well.
I'm usually up at 6 to do the radio show, and I'm back in bed by now. But welcome along. Look, we are going to keep this clean. I say keep this nice. We are all at the end of the day Leicester City fans, and I know you two will not drag it down at all. But no, let's everybody keep it polite. Craig, first of all, in the blue corner there. I've got to say, is this a generational thing? You know, we've always accused Man United fans of sort of expecting too much because they never knew pre-Fergie. Now, I'm not saying that Locks is you know, a child or anything like that, but he's obviously a lot younger generation than you and me are. And maybe, I don't know how far back he goes, he'll tell us in a minute, but do you think it could be generational?
I think there's an element of that in it, to be honest. And I'm not here to defend, you know, they don't need me to defend them. They don't even know who I am, I don't think. I'm not here to defend everything that the club has done and the management, because clearly they've made some mistakes. I think that's fair. And I think the most ardent fan of Top and the management team, probably even their families, would say that they've made mistakes. I think that's pretty certain. What I struggle with a little bit is a lot of the understanding of what actually goes on behind the scenes at a football club and how much they are responsible for. For instance, I mean, one of the first comments there from Luke was hundreds, not just millions, but hundreds of millions lost in transfer fees by letting contracts run down. I would say that we've probably lost millions. Hundreds, I think, is pushing it a bit. But, and there's a big but for me, we do not know what is going on behind the scenes. Do we know if those new players were offered contracts and turned them down? If they turn them down, should we accept any miserable offer that comes in from any club? Can a player refuse to go? Of course he can. So we don't know if we got offers in that were low, offers in that the players rejected. We don't know if we offered new contracts 2 years before. That's what we tended to do. I remember us doing it with Ricky, and we didn't really do that. We didn't let them run down. But the power is with players these days and their agents in their ear saying, if you hold out, you'll get a better deal either from the club you're at, or you can put yourself on the market and try and find a better deal. So, you know, I think that's a tough one to lay at the board because we don't know the facts. But definitely, I'll let you speak in a minute, Rox. But I think there's definitely criticism that is fair, but some of it, I think, is without the actual facts behind the stories.
Yeah, I mean, Locks, like I say, I am the older generation, and I'm not saying that Top is, you know, gets everything right. In fact, you know, during the relegation season, even I posted a thing saying, should he be go? How much of the blame lays at his door? But then again, you know, when we got promoted and he brought Enzo in, you got to give him praise. You know, I mean, without sort of asking you your age, well, it might be easier just to ask you your age.
26.
26, right, brilliant. So how far back do you go with Leicester?
My first ever Leicester City game, and the day that I became a Leicester fan, was in League One. It was against Bristol Rovers. A match against Bristol Rovers. My family on my mum's side have been Leicester fans all their lives. I was from Wales. I grew up in Wales, so I didn't support anyone really when I was that young. I think I must have been, I'll do the maths, I don't know, 10. And I went to my first game because we visited up in Leicester, and that was the first football game I ever went to, Bristol Rovers, and from that day I was a Leicester fan. So
I've got to say then, fair play to you, because you have known the bad times. In fact, that was probably one of the worst times.
Well, it was probably the season, you know, the worst was probably the season before, right? Where Leicester got relegated to League One. Obviously, from that season, it was okay, really, because we went up and whatever. But yeah, I mean, I was in school with I remember in maths class, we used to wrap our workbooks in whatever we wanted. And I was there. Everyone had Chelsea and Man United and maybe Swansea or Cardiff, but I was there with Leicester. And obviously everyone would laugh. So, but, you know, luckily, and this is where I will give credit, luckily, you know, because of King Power, not many years later, I was able to laugh back in their faces. So
So, I mean, are we? And no, your channel blue tinted glasses. Are we wearing blue tinted glasses and saying, "Look, yes, look, I've got the way you can't see it, but I've got the trophy, copy of the trophy behind me. We've got an FA Cup which we'd never won before." But are owners any different to managers in that they do have a sell-by date?
I think so. What I like to do is I do make a clear distinction between Vishay and Top, and I think that a lot of the goods that has come to Leicester City, including the FA Cup, even though that was after Vishay had passed, I think it was all set up from Vishay. I mean, you just look at the decisions, some of the decisions. Let's talk about Ranieri. I mean, I spoke about the Ranieri sacking last time I was on the show with you, Chris.
Yeah.
That was savage. That was cutthroat to do that, not, a few months after winning the Premier League. Vishay could do that. Vishay did that. And I don't think Top has that same cutthroat decision making, which is why Rodgers stayed in the job for so long, which is why Steve Cooper is going to stay in this job for too long as well.
Craig, good points made there by Locks. Are we sort of allowing to say, well, maybe Top isn't his, what his dad was, but then again, he's, not been able to spend or keep his eye on the club as much because obviously of COVID and everything that's gone on with, a tourist-based company.
I think what we've seen is how much Vishay was responsible for, because the other people at the club that a lot of the criticism has been pointed at are still at the club and were at the club when under Vishay. So I think it's fair to say that he was the prime motivator behind the success, and he was ruthless, and he made tough decisions. And I think it's very difficult for someone such as Top, who has almost grown up with these people as being friends, to then have the ruthlessness to be able to make tough decisions. And I think I don't think anybody would disagree that Top at this stage in his life, his age, his career, and not just his career here, but his career in running King Power, is nowhere near the guy that Vishay was. And maybe Vishay wasn't at that age as well. So I think it's clear that Top, is probably more of an emotional guy, I think, and he allows those emotions to come into play, and which, in life isn't a bad thing, to see people as people and not commodities. And that's where the most ruthless businessmen differentiate themselves. They see people as commodities and they will make those tough decisions. I don't think Top is that guy. And I'll be sort of leaning towards your side, Locks, on Cooper. But do you throw the baby out with the bathwater? That's probably an old saying that you may not even know.
I've heard it. Yeah.
It is. If you ask for Top to sell, none of us know what comes after it, and that is the biggest gamble. It is a case of, as you put it there, Chris, and I put it in my notes, it is a careful what you wish for. I think maybe he would benefit from some outside help, maybe some more experienced people in running football clubs who could see it with some fresh eyes rather than everybody who's been there for so long.
That's the thing, isn't it, Locks? And I said when we got relegated, I said, very much like when Nero fiddled while Rome burned. That was a bit of Tops in that relegation season, and he was really too loyal to Brendan Rodgers because he'd felt that he hadn't supported him in the summer because of all the PSR or whatever it was called at the time, and he felt he had to stick by him. And I do, as much as I'm a supporter of Top, I do get that feeling that when it comes to the big decisions, he does fiddle a little bit, if you like.
I'm not naive enough to think that Top is directly responsible for all of the failings that have happened. However, the people that are responsible, they are still at the club. Yeah. Top has refused to get rid or whatever it is. I mean, Craig made a really good point, and it's about, Top has grown up with these people around him. And I do think that's what it is. I think that when Vishai died, because none of us were slagging off Rudkin and Whelan back in 2016, 2017, right? But since Vishai died, there has been I don't know what, it's been a downward trend, at Leicester. Even with the FA Cup win, certain decisions around the club have been baffling. And I think that they now believe, Rudkin, Whelan, Andrew Neville, somebody mentioned, they probably believe that, they're untouchable at the football club because they've made so many mistakes, and Top has refused to make any decision to get rid of them. And, I know that Enzo Maresca isn't some Leicester fans, they're not the biggest fan of him, but even his mouthpiece, should I say, Gillan Balaguer last season, he actually said on BBC Radio Leicester that Enzo wasn't too pleased with the structure at the football club, and he did want a change. And Gillan Balaguer also kind of mentioned that if that didn't happen, then it would be likely that Enzo would leave. And I do believe that is why it was such an easy decision for him to leave. We've seen Brendan Rodgers turn down big jobs before whilst at Leicester City. He was happy with the setup at Leicester because he was actually the one, confirmed by Rob Tanner, he scrapped the scouting department at Leicester. The scouting department that brought us N'Golo Kante, Riyad Mahrez, James Maddison, Ricardo Pereira, Rodgers scrapped that department and he installed his own people into it. So he was happy and he had the run of the club. But Enzo wasn't best pleased with it. And I think that's why it was easy for him to leave. And, again, Graham Potter, the latest rumours. I've heard, we've all heard different rumours. The rumour I've heard is that from someone I do trust is that Potter wanted to bring in his own guy to either replace or sit alongside Rudkin. And the board weren't having any of that, which is why he never came. So that they are my biggest gripes. Again, I'll say it again. I don't blame Top directly for every bad decision, but he is keeping the people making them decisions in place at the football club. And that's where it stops with him. That is on him.
Look, we say when it comes to team matters, the buck stops with Cooper. When it comes to club matters, the buck has to stop with Top. I just want to, before I come on to another point, Craig, I just want to take up on a point that Locke said there with you. Brendan Rodgers was happy to stay, or was he scared of taking on a big club? Because he'd come from Celtic, where, let's be honest with you or I or Locke could go up there and win the league and treble and what have you. And then he'd come down to Leicester where, if he didn't particularly do well, but he kept us mid-table, that would be deemed as a success. Was he scared of doing that big move? And yes, he was linked with a lot of big clubs.
Is that to me or Locke?
Yeah, sorry, yes, to you, Craig. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah. Well, potentially, but then if you're on a good thing, if like we've said, or Locke has said there, that he brought in his own people, he got rid of the structure behind him. So if this is your structure, you're basically running most of the club the way that you want it to be run, then you're on a good thing. And let's not forget, we were sort of 3 or 4 games slumps away from being back into the Champions League on a couple of occasions.
Yeah.
And again, where does the blame lie for that? Not necessarily at the board, not necessarily at Top, but the management. And when that slippery slope started, you could say, yes, at that point, that's when they should have made a little bit of a tough decision. What I would say is it fair to say that the board, including Top, have tried to learn from that? So if you're saying that Brendan Rodgers had all his own men in, that didn't work and it took away the control that the club had, would they then want to repeat that with Potter, who wants to bring his own men in? At some point, we know that these managers are transigent and they will leave, and then you're left with what's behind. And you either have a structure that is in place and you appoint a coach to work with who's there, or you appoint a manager to manage more of it. And I wonder if they've tried to lean away and learn from past mistakes. And I think if we've seen from some of the signings, for instance, that they've tried to move towards getting back to that thing of buying younger players who are hungry, who are going to be investments. If you look at Coley, Hermansen, Bilal, all those kind of players. They're trying to recreate that. So if they find themselves in a position where a manager had too much control, would they be happy appointing someone and then giving him the same levels of control? Would be my argument to say maybe why they moved away from it.
Yeah.
Well, Enzo, for example, was happy to be just a coach, but Enzo was not happy with the people that were running the club above him. That was the problem with Enzo. I'm not saying Enzo wanted to completely change the structure. He just wasn't happy with the people who were in place. And again, I go back to Gillan Balaguer because he is our closest source to Enzo. He did say on Radio Leicester, I'm not blaming anyone. I'm not putting the finger at anyone in particular, but you need footballing people. And I don't think there are enough footballing people in charge at this football club whatsoever.
I think, sorry, Chris, I think it's a very fair comment to make that the people who are in the positions that they're in now have also learnt them on the job. Rudkin, for instance, his background was coming in and helping out as a coach, almost like free of charge, just to get in the football club and get his coaching badges and this, that, and the other. And all the things that happened behind the scenes at that point with Mandarich and all those things meant that he was a constant who was there and almost got elevated up to a position that he's not necessarily qualified to do. He's just done it on experience. But what I would say, and I'll quote Maresca here from what he said over the weekend, the owner and his family are fantastic people, fantastic human beings. They care for the players, staff, all the people that work inside the club, and you can see that, and the sporting director, John Rudkin, too. Now, they're his words, and it's much easier to say that once you've left. But I think it's clear that he had problems with not necessarily the structure, and I think the biggest criticism is probably the decision-making and the openness and clarity with that decision-making, that they weren't honest. They weren't necessarily honest with Brendan, and I don't think they were necessarily honest with Maresca, with him finding things about potential points deductions, how much the money they've got to spend. And I think that's probably the biggest stick that you can hit those people with.
Locks, come back on that. But for what Craig just said, then he's got history of that as top, because he did that with Brendan. In that summer, Brendan was going off offering contracts to people because he thought he'd got the money, only to be told. And of course, they are a very secretive club, whether that comes down from the fact that we're owned by Thai owners. And there's a very interesting piece in the Athletic, I don't know if anybody's read it yet, about Thai and Saudi and that sort of owners, why they want to get into the Premier League. That could be worth a read. Well, it is worth a read. So Top has got history here, hasn't he, in not necessarily being open enough?
Yeah, I mean, Brendan Rodgers, he did something which he shouldn't have done anyway, which after the Forest FA Cup game, when we got battered, when Forest was still in the Championship, he threw a lot of players under the bus. He did. And Rodgers did that because he was expecting a few players to come in that summer to replace them players that he'd just thrown under the bus, and he didn't get it. And it was a big surprise. He did a sit-down interview with Owen Palmer-Atkin in the summer, and he said he was surprised when he heard the news that PSR issues were so massive at the club and that we couldn't sign anyone. And we're led to believe that they also didn't explain to Enzo when they appointed him to what extent the PSR issues were there. So there we go. There's two massive examples of where they've not been completely honest. They've not given the manager of the football club, they've not given them full disclosure. That is who you are meant to be given full disclosure to. They need to know the situation of a club, especially when you're hiring one. And look, I believe, although I had a bit of a wobble with him halfway through the season, I believe Enzo was a very modern thinking manager, the correct appointment. And it kind of went back to, since Claude Puel, they've gone down the possession style route. Obviously, that only changed with Dean Smith to try and keep us up at the end of the season. Yeah. I think it was the right appointment. And I truly believe that when Enzo did leave, they should have carried on, with that. And the players clearly loved Enzo. They did. A lot, the players loved the style of football that they were playing. They've all spoken really highly of it. besides Mark Albrighton, but that doesn't surprise me because Albrighton's an old school footballer. He didn't play too often, so that doesn't surprise me. But it seemed in the press and in the interviews this season that the players were happy on going back to the Enzo style, if you like, when we've touched on it this year. So I think the club should have gone down that route and have put in another one. Now it just looks like a backward step. I mean, even when Enzo left, Radio Leicester reported that the club were looking at a manager of a similar ilk to Enzo, and we went for Steve Cooper. That just tells me there's no plan. And I'm not going to get personal to Cooper, but I think it was the cheap, easy option to get as manager. And that's not me blaming Cooper. And I feel bad for Cooper, by the way, because he hasn't appointed himself. It's the people above him who have appointed him.
Craig, on that point, I didn't want to get this into too much of a Cooper out, but I totally get where you're coming from, Locks. As Ben says there, it was Chelsea who played, if anything, give him until the West Ham game. Look, we have won 2 games this season, neither of them convincingly. Bournemouth on any other day would have put 3 or 4 past us. Southampton should have been out of sight against us. And the fact of the matter is that we are getting worse. When you're looking at teams like Wolves yesterday putting 4 past Fulham. Was Cooper... I mean, yes, it would have been nice to have somebody come in with the same philosophy because, having spent a season getting used to playing one way, they're now getting used to playing another. But when Ranieri came in, he didn't change me. He just tinkered, didn't he? Yeah. He didn't change much. Where Cooper's come in and, all right, maybe he's had to because he had no staff left because everybody went with Enzo. But was it a case of, look, we thought we were going to get anything from 6 to 12 points deducted. Was it a case of Cooper was the only one that would take it?
I think, a lot of it is conjecture, sadly. And if we are, as I say, I don't think Cooper's necessarily as bad as we think, but I'm not a fan. I've said that. And I think we need to get someone who is more of a tactician, a better motivator. I don't think he's up to the task. He may be a nice bloke and he may be a good coach one-to-one at a lower, younger level, but he's not a Premier League manager for me. So I fully accept that. If we're saying that that's the wrong appointment, but we're also saying that Maresca was the right appointment, then we have to give them credit for being brave enough to take someone who'd not managed in the Premier League, who'd been a coach, who'd learned a lot under Pep, obviously. So from that point, the board that we're criticising for everything, I've looked at it and thought, right, we need to bring in someone who's going to be a modern thinking manager that's going to help us get back up, number one, which he did, and then take us forward and build the club back to the levels where we all want it to be. He left for reasons that somebody came and thrown a lot of money at him, and it's a huge club. I don't think most managers who are starting out would turn it down because we know with a club like Leicester, you can have a bad season and your reputation goes with it. So, I as much as I wasn't happy that he went, particularly on some of the stuff that he was doing in the background, trying to organise the pre-season tour or not, giving players longer contracts because he wanted them as part, and then he walked away. I wasn't happy about that. But the board appointed him. So if we're saying that was a good appointment, then they have to take credit for that in very much the same way that they have to be criticised for Cooper. But we never know. We never know what's on. And it could well be, as I said, one, if Potter wanted too much control, I can understand them walking away from that because of what Brendan did. And then how many other people wanted it. I would have loved them to have gone down a similar route to Maresca. And I think that's what they needed to do. I think they needed to continue to be brave and find a similar manager. And I think they may have just panicked a little bit based on who was available, who was prepared to take the job, and the fact that there was a potential points deduction coming over us. I think if they looked back at it, I think it's a fair point to say that if they knew they weren't going to get a points deduction, they may have gone down a different route.
Locks, do you think we panicked? I mean, we thought we'd got Enzo. It was a brave decision. Nobody, unless they sat here with a crystal ball, and they'd be very uncomfortable if they had, would actually have thought that Enzo was going to be the manager appointed. It was what the club needed at the time because we were all so down. And then here was this guy walking into the club to take over that only 6 days before had been holding the Champions League trophy. We thought we'd probably got him for a couple of years. And as much as it hurt at the time, I'm very much like, Craig there. You've got to go for these jobs when they're offered. I mean, look at Rodgers. He was being linked with Man United, was it Barcelona and Spurs? Oh, sorry, I should have stuck with big clubs, shouldn't I? But, and then when it all came to it, he scuttles off back to Scotland because the offers weren't coming in. Was it a panic with Coop? Did the board panic there?
Yeah, I've seen the argument about, there was no one else. I think it's very naive to suggest that there was no one else who wanted to become manager of Premier League champions, FA Cup champions, Leicester City. I think it's very naive. I don't think that is the case at all. And to be honest with you, I get what Craig said about with Potter. Maybe they didn't want to give control to this new guy coming in because they'd learnt from Rodgers. But these top managers, they require the job to be sold to them, not the other way around. And some people might disagree with that, and that's fair enough. But that's the way I see it. And I think that Steve Cooper, I wholeheartedly agree. It was the cheapest option, and it was probably the easiest option to get him in. Did they panic? Probably. Again, the rumor was that we were speaking with Potter all the way until the day that Cooper signed. So clearly, we all know this, right? That Cooper wasn't the first choice, but that's who we settled with, and that's who we've got. Again, this isn't a Cooper out debate, in or out debate, but no. It's about the board, and the board are the ones that put him there. I just think that there would have been a lot better option. And Carlos Corberán, I mean, that was a name that was going around. Some people disagree because he's a championship manager, right? That's what people say, and because there was a buyout of £3 million, but we spent £25 million on Oliver Skipp, and we got £10 million for Enzo Maresca. So if that is the reason we didn't spend £3 million, we didn't want to spend £3 million on Corberán. That's nuts to me. It's nuts. So if they have gone down the cheap option, it's crazy. And who else was on the manager list? The Leuven boss. He was on the short list, and he's just been sacked.
I'm going to say they're not doing very well, are they? But the interesting thing is with Cooper, and when I was saying about the panic buy, I'll stick with you with this, Locks, if I can, is that apparently Burnley had put an offer on the table to Cooper, and he said he wanted more time, which they gave him. They then went back to him because we hadn't offered him the position and said, look, are you going to take it or not? And then they withdrew the offer. Maybe Leicester felt that they had to sort of get in quick, if you like, because of Burnley. I don't know. But the point there, Locks, that Terry's making, have you seen I haven't seen this documentary. There's no doubt as to where Top's priorities are. Look, you can have more than one interest. I mean, King Power isn't just one entity, is it? And it's a huge family. Let's not forget, the vice chairman is his brother. I think it's his sister, his aunt, his mother are still involved all in the game. It's a big family. I mean, that's really, sorry, Terry, I take your point on and I respect it. I don't think you can say that he's got priorities elsewhere.
Well, he has got priorities elsewhere, but you would imagine that the main priority is Leicester City Football Club. Look, as Craig mentioned, we don't know the ins and outs and what's going behind the football club, and you never do know what's going on with the person. Maybe he's still grieving, for God's sake. Maybe he doesn't like having too much focus on the football club. It's a reminder every day of his father, for crying out loud. So we don't know the ins and outs. My point is, though, is that he needs to bring in new people. I think that's unquestionable for me. Some people might disagree. I think it's unquestionable. The people currently at the football club are making wrong decision after wrong decision, and it's from the smallest of decisions, like putting out. I don't know if you saw, like they refused to put out, or they refused to let Union FS put out mental health leaflets and stuff like that. They're the small decisions, and then you go up to the bigger decisions, with the manager appointments. All the PSR stuff. I mean, I find it crazy. In isolation, these mistakes, these decisions, bad decisions, they're okay. No one, not even the best owners in the world, Brighton's owners, for example, not even they get every decision spot on. But more times than not, recently, it has been a bad decision after bad decision. And I think, Top, I think, needs to understand he needs to be the bigger guy and kind of accept that the football club isn't being ran very well at the moment. And I mean, I don't know about Craig. Do you genuinely believe the club is being ran well right now? Or is your side of the argument more on credit in the bank? Because if it is credit in the bank, that's what got us relegated under Brendan Rodgers.
No, I think there are definite improvements. As I said, I think he needs to bring in people who have more business acumen, more experience of football at a higher level. Because, as I said, some of these people like Rudkin have just grown up in the job. When we say, but I would take issue with you saying bad decision after bad decision after bad decision. As I said, our last topic that we were just talking about was 18 months ago when they appointed Maresca. That wasn't a bad decision. What's happened since, it hasn't worked out, and we can have conjecture about whether Corberan would have done a better job. We don't know at the end of it. But I think there's definitely an argument that new, fresh blood needs to be brought in. I think Top, if you imagine when your father dies in such circumstances and you have to travel halfway around the world to go and try and look after your football club, you want people around you who you know and who have become second family almost. So I can understand why he didn't want to change too much at that time. But it's now football is a different game. You've got to have expertise in there. You've got to have experience. And still not every decision will be right. But to call for Top and his family to leave the club, I think is excessive, to be honest, because we don't know. You could do great and have a new Arab owner, but you could just as easily go the other way. I think they do have some credit. He has credit in the bank. The family has credit in the bank, but I do think there needs to be an injection of some fresh blood with some experience and different.
Loyal, Craig?
Pardon?
Is he too loyal?
Well, I think he has been, as I touched on. When that happens and your world is shattered, and all of this then comes on you. And as I say, not just the football club, but all the rest of the business empire. You don't push away the people who were there because you need that support, and you have to trust those people as well. You have to go back, deal with everything that's happening, and you have to trust that those people who brought you the league and are capable of doing their jobs. But there has to be an evolution in football clubs. I would agree with that, and he needs to be a little more. Now he's at the point now where it's almost like a crossroads, isn't it? Of where does he, if he still wants to be at the club, and I believe he does, where does he go? At some point he's got to be taking some tougher decisions and creating his own legacy. I've talked about this before on other ones. We're still talking about the legacy that Vichai built. Top now needs to be looking at his legacy. What's he going to do that we can look at saying, right, Top did this, that, and the other? Because at the minute, it's not great. So I think one way or another, he needs to bring in some fresh blood and take the club forward. The other thing I would say is, in the big scheme of football, you're talking about, am I saying historically that has he got stuff in the bank? And then on the other argument, we're talking basically about the last 8-9 years of relative success. Where do we and Locks and the younger generation believe the level of our club is, based on the fan base, the stadium, the history, the success, all of that? Where do we believe in the structure of 92 football clubs in reality Leicester City should be?
Well, in the era of the Premier League, we are the 7th most successful club in England. So I truly believe that we are a mid-table Premier League club. if I'm honest with you. I'm not going to be big-headed or arrogant or naive enough to say that we should be fighting for Europe every year. I think we are a mid-table Premier League club, and that's where we should be. And I don't think our squad currently is that level. I think the squad currently is good enough to survive. But, I think top, you listed some reasons there as to why top might keep these people in place. He needs to put the business first, in my opinion. When it comes to Leicester City, I'm sorry, but you need to put the club first. And maybe he is trying to do that, but that's not what's happening, in my opinion. If I saw another comment as well from Luke as well, and I know Craig mentioned it, maybe that he's too loyal to these people around him that have been there that he's grown up with. You need to get rid. They marked their own homework when we got relegated. They said there was an investigation. Whelan, Rudkin, Andrew Neville, Top, whatever. They marked their own homework. No wrongdoings found. How do you work that one out? Come on, shocking.
No, I gotta say I agree with that. And look, would you be happy, Locke? Let's say Top came over and said, right, and we know that changes made. Sporting directors move from club to club all the time, and there must be some, sporting directors that have done well. I mean, probably the sporting director from Man City wouldn't come to us, although they might at the moment, of course. But you know what I'm saying? There's ones that would come to us. If Top was to come in and say, right, Whelan, Rudkin, and Neville, and you can't do it all in one go, over the rest of the season, started to sort of make changes there.
Yep.
And bring some, not necessarily just football people, but football people with a business, that have done these jobs elsewhere. Would that change your thoughts on Top?
100%. 100%. When was the last time that we saw a statement from the club saying, right, this new... Sometimes, mate, right, the director of footballs and recruitment teams, you hear it's like transfer news. You hear it on Sky Sports. Oh, Newcastle have agreed a deal to bring in this whoever from Man City, whatever. I get the sentiment behind Rudkin. He's also grown up in a way around the football club. He's gone for the Walter Mitty of football, John Rudkin, and he started at the bottom and he's worked his way up. You can't have that. He's not an expert. He is not a footballer. He's not an expert in this role. And you need somebody. You need to get somebody in who is. You are a multi-million-pound business in the Premier League, the pinnacle of football. You can't have someone in the role that he's in that used to make the beds at the academy. I'm sorry. I refuse to believe that that's a good idea. You need to get better footballing people in and around Top. And once he does that, I truly believe we will start to see better decision-making at that level. But as it stands, Top isn't doing any of that, and that is where the problem lies, I think.
Craig, I think was Whelan not with him before she came to Leicester? I think she was with him in some other role at King Power, wasn't she?
I think she might have been. I think what we're seeing is that there's a lot of common ground, that we need some changes to be made. I honestly think they thought when they got Maresca, that was the start of some changes being made. The first time, in my understanding, that a manager had looked at the club as a whole and was getting every team throughout all of the age groups to play exactly the same kind of football. So there is some kind of legacy coming through. This is what clubs in the continent do. The manager is the only thing that changes very often. They have a structure and a way of playing, and it's the club's way of playing. It's not the manager's way of playing. The manager has to fit in to what the club want. We don't see Atletico Madrid, Barcelona, all these top clubs playing different football. You see a lot of managerial changes, but you don't see them playing football differently. And that has to go throughout the club. And I think that's what they thought they were getting with Maresca, that at that point, we're going to have this restructure. All the age groups are going to be playing the same. There's going to be a conveyor belt of success. But he's gone. And then they've started
like
to
Brighton.
Brighton. They've had to look at manager change, which is probably wasn't in their plans at all, that they thought they had to do that. But I agree. And as I said, I do agree that he needs to bring in football people. It's got to that point now where it is a multi-million, if not billion-pound industry where you need specialists.
And sometimes you just need that refresh. People, well, you could, even let's say if we were kind of mid-table, but sometimes the refresh just moves you on to that next stage, doesn't it? And well, I just want to bring that point up that Michael's made there, because it was actually Mandrich that brought King Power in. And I just want to move on to this point, which I've put in the top left-hand corner there, Locks. When Mandrich was owner of Portsmouth, he sold out to a guy called Gaymark, I'm not sure what it was called, what exactly pronunciation. I think he was either Russian or he was certainly Eastern European, who turned out to be the biggest criminal going. And he absolutely ruined Portsmouth. They'd only not so long ago won the FA Cup under Harry Redknapp, and they went right down, I think it was to the 4th tier they went right down to, and they have never really recovered from that. So when I heard that Mandrich was selling to a Thai consortium, and let's be honest with you, there's also the Thai Prime Minister, was it, who owned Manchester City, who'd ended up in jail. I was absolutely pooing my pants because, again, Mandrich came in, saved the club. Yes, all right, what he does is he comes in, buys cheap, sells high. We've got to thank him for that because he saved the club. Have we, who if Top was to go, and like you've said there, he doesn't have to if he can, grow a pair and make the decisions that he needs to. Where do we go? Because nobody seems to be rushing to come in for the club.
Do we think that if we got relegated this season and the EFL hit us with transfer embargoes, with points deductions, which is rumoured, and King Power and Top start to very quickly realise that this is going to be a real big task to get us out of this mess and get us back up, do you think there's any possibility that they actually just sell the club anyway and walk away? Because they know that they can't help us anymore? I think they would.
I don't know. I think for me, they're too committed for that. What about you, Craig?
No, I think they're invested. I think they're invested not just in the club, but in the city as well. I don't think they're the kind of people who would walk away and leave something in disarray. I think they're too loyal to the fan base for that. I don't think they would just say, right, we're, over to you, someone else. I don't think they would do it. I think they would do everything in their power to get them back promoted, which is, again, what they did last year with Maresca. I think, there may well come a time when they decide to move on, whether that's of their choice or whether somebody comes in and looks at the club and the structure behind it and says, hang on a minute, this is not a sleeping giant, but this is a solid Premier League team. I think when I looked at all the football clubs that are in the 92, and I think we're probably about the 16th to 17th, which is roughly where we are in rankings. So we are an attractive proposition, but I think it will be someone coming to offer Top an out rather than Top taking it out.
I mean, I think with Mandrich, he looked for Top because that's always been his game plan, hasn't it? But that is the worry, though, isn't it, Locks? Is that do be careful what you wish for.
I get it. I understand completely. Yeah, 100%, mate. Be careful what you wish for. The grass isn't always greener. I mean, we see it with Leicester players who quickly realise the grass isn't greener when they leave to go to another club. Look at Drinkwater, for example, and Chilwell. But again, I want to stress, if Top and the board started making the correct decisions, I'm not, I am fully behind them. It's just that it's been, when did the real issues start? Probably 2020, the start of 2022, summer 2022, when the whole PSR stuff started and Rodgers didn't get what he wanted and all of this. Since then, I don't see real progress. Yes, we appointed Enzo Maresca and we got promoted first time of trying, which is absolutely incredible, and fair play to the board for appointing him and for Enzo for taking us up.
In the end,
but
yeah,
just. But at the end of the day, the reason that Enzo Maresca is not in charge of this football club right now, in my opinion, is because of the people that appointed him, because they lied to him. They didn't tell him about PSR. He got Stefano Sensi, who he believed was going to really help us on the last half of the season. He got him down to Seagrave. They arranged that, and we couldn't even get the deal over the line because we were and ahhing over £1 or £2 million. I mean, how is a football club of our size, with the wages we pay, not able to get a deal over the line because of £1 or £2 million? That is because of the mismanagement over the previous 2 years that led to that. So,
or sorry to interrupt, but that could be that they've spotted something in a medical that says he's too much of a gamble, and he then a couple of months later goes and has a serious operation that puts him out for months.
Yeah, you're right. That is what happened. That is what happened.
Yeah.
That is what happened with Sensi. But Rob Tanner, again, I'm only going off journalists and what's been reported. Owen as well. They all said it was because of the actual deal and not because of the medical. That's what they have said.
Yeah, but that could be that he's not worth...
who had a back fracture.
Yeah, but it could be that there's a value of players. You know, there's a value in terms of fees. There's a value in terms of wages. All these things that come into it that make an injured player less of a gamble. If they thought this is too much, then that may be why they pulled the thing. But
if £2 million is too much for an Inter Milan player, and then you go and spend £25 million 6 months later on Oliver Skipp.
Yeah, I get that. I get that. But you know, if depending on which side of the fence you're on, you look at that as a near miss because of what went on and happened. You can use it as a criticism, and I get that, and I understand fully your reasoning for doing it. Or you could say we dodged a bullet.
I'm using in the context that Enzo Maresca wanted him. Enzo Maresca handpicked him and wanted him, and he didn't get him. And Enzo was probably under the impression that, you know, maybe not to the same extent, but similar things may happen this summer. You know, players that he wanted to come into Leicester to help us in the Premier League, maybe they wouldn't get over the line as well. We don't know. Again, we don't know the ins and outs, but I think I truly believe, of course, he was always going to be tempted by Chelsea. Of course he was. It's Chelsea, the money involved, all of that. But the decision was made a lot easier because of the board, in my opinion.
I think he's the type of guy who would always jump, to be honest. Yes, he did. That we did make it easier, but he's got that level of arrogance about him that we've seen. We saw him when he was at Leicester. We're seeing it now at Chelsea. That he believes he's an elite manager, and these opportunities come up. And he jumped, and I was disappointed that he jumped. But yes, we probably helped the decision.
We didn't do anything to keep him, is what I'm trying to say. And if anything,
that we know of.
Well, we know that they didn't tell him the full extent of the PSR issues. We know that,
and there is history of that of the board not letting the manager know the details. But I want to kind of bring it and bring a club that none of us particularly like. But I want to sort of take upon a point that you mentioned there, Locks, about, you know, $1 million or $2 million here. You know, we're arguing over that, and then look at what happened with Leeds. Now, again, I don't know how much you know about this, but obviously Leeds went for it. They, you know, and the people were saying like, well, why didn't we spend more when we were sort of 5th and 6th? And, you know, but then again, they were saying we weren't prepared for relegation. I think we were trying to keep a foot in both camps, because if you look at Leeds went for it. And they did get, I don't know if they got to the semi-final of the final of what? Final of the Champions League and lost it. But look what happened to them. They spent and they spent and they spent. And then managers came in, Terry Venables came in, and he ended up walking a few weeks later because he'd been lied to. And, you know, we'd had that, you know, the UEFA warning us that if we qualified for Europe again, we could possibly be thrown out if we didn't cut back on the spending post-COVID. So, you know, that had expired. And I suppose trying to balance it, because at the end of the day, would we sooner be in the position we are now or go through what happened to Leeds, Locks?
I don't think that's a concern, though. I don't think we're anywhere near that. We're on the.
Could we have been if we'd been spending the money, like you're saying?
What, 1 or 2 million? I mean, we spent 440 on Yuri Tillemans. You know, we spent 25 million on Daka, 30 on Fofana. You know, we were still spending this money. You know, I'm talking about last season. I mean, they clearly weren't that bothered, because I know Craig said about how about running the contracts down. You don't know whether the player refuses to go or any of this, but there were offers. There were offers for Yuri Tillemans. There were offers before his contract expired, and we turned them down. We didn't even entertain any of them, and he ran his contract down. I mean, we all knew as fans he was unlikely to stay. We were talking about it a year before. Oh, it'd be great if Tielemans signs a new deal, but it ain't going to happen, is it? And it never happened. And we let him go. It's a £40 million hit on Yuri Tielemans. We could have easily got at least 30 of that back a year, 18 months prior. And yes, maybe Rodgers didn't want him to go. It was, he was vital to Rodgers and to trying to play in Europe. But again, that's when it comes down to top, doesn't it? And the board, the cutthroat decision making. If you know that a player is unlikely to sign a contract, recoup some of the money. Don't let him go on a free. But you
can't make an argument to say do everything a manager wants or don't do, and then say override what your manager wants. That you have to make a decision based on something. You've said that we didn't do what Maresca wanted. We didn't get the players in that we wanted. And we did what Brendan wanted. We kept the players that he wanted. You can't have it both ways based on the argument that you want to get the result out of.
You need to find a middle ground, though, don't you? I
agree.
As a business owner.
But you can't say, right, well, on the very same argument, that's right and that's wrong when it's the same argument.
The board brought Sensi. They brought him to Seagrave. They flew him. They paid for his jet. You know what I mean? They flew him over, and they couldn't get the deal over the line because of allegedly. Again, it is all allegedly the amount of money. But what I'm trying to say here is that you had a manager in Enzo Maresca that fitted the club's values and all of this, like Rodgers did a few years earlier. Rodgers, it was a downward trend. It was downward trend. We could see it from the year we finished. So we finished 5th the second time. And then what was it? 8th. And then it was relegation. And I don't know. I just think that this is where you need the footballing people in place. This is where you've just said it yourself. Whelan was with Topper, where at King Power before. So he brought Whelan to Leicester City. And it's like, she's not a footballing person. She worked at King Power. How can you have a group of businessmen in charge at a football club with no big amounts of knowledge of football? I don't get it. That's not how Brighton are ran. That's not how Man City are ran. They've got footballing people. Newcastle, even Manchester United are going down this route now. You see Ineos bringing in footballing people. There is none of it.
Craig, going back to like the Tielemans, and yes, that the Leicester's way of doing things is to buy and then sell and make a profit. The thing with the Tielemans one is, on that last, when we got into that season, and maybe when we got to January, keeping hold of Tielemans. All right, we did eventually go down as it happens, but the sort of player that he had been, he could have been the player that kept us up. And letting him go for nothing if we'd stayed up would probably not have been as expensive as going down. And yes, I know we went down eventually, but when you're looking at it in advance, that's the sort of decision that these people have got to make.
It is. I mean, as we all know, we're all fans and we all live in a world of hindsight based on what happens in the past. If Chelsea had said, actually, Pochettino's done really well these last 3 months, let's stick with him. Maresca may well have still been here. We may still be playing nice, pretty football, and we may be where Southampton are. It's all conjecture, and that's what makes following a football club such as Leicester so interesting, to be honest. And yet, do we want us? And this is an old argument, and it's a really hard one for younger generations to get. And this is no offense, is part of the amazing, unbelievable success that we had was made all the more sweeter because of the journey to get there. Yeah. And this is what football is. I truly believe it's cyclical, and you go down and you come up, unless you want to be 11th every season or 12th every season, and that's what you're happy with, just watching the big stars come in and playing. I get it. Of course, I don't want us relegated. I don't want that. But you can't be fighting with the big boys all the time. And I know that is not this argument. I get that. And changes do need to be made. But what I'm saying is a lot of the arguments that are made are based on hindsight of things that haven't worked out.
Yeah. Can I come to you, Craig, with the point that I put to Locks before about the Leeds situation?
Yeah, but again, it's a hindsight. You never know, do you?
No,
I
the
think
game rolls the
we
dice,
gambled, but we gambled a little bit in our own way under Rodgers. I think
not to that extent. I was saying,
Oh,
although
no.
we gambled, but we were kind of like, oh, look at what happened to Leeds. We've got to be
And
a
you,
little bit careful.
and you know why? Because you do have people at the club who are business people. You can't have everyone who's just a football fan. That doesn't work, because we can't say on one hand this is a millions of £billion industry and then leave it to football fans. You've got to run it as a business. As much as we hate football being a business, it is a business, so you do need business people behind the scenes. But then you need the knowledgeable people who know football in the right positions. And that is probably where the balance has to be struck. And those people who are dealing with players, such as a Rudkin and that, they do have to have an understanding of how football works, I think, and buy into a longer term vision. But behind the scenes, those people who run Man City, are not necessarily, they're football fans, but they have built the success on business. And that's what Vichai had done. He'd built it on business. What they haven't done then is got the balance right between people who understand football and modern football, I would say, because if you grow up in it, you understand football, but not necessarily modern football and how it works to be successful.
The business and the finance people aren't that good either, clearly, because we're getting FFP PSR breaches, all the time. So they're
because they backed a manager under Rodgers who wanted certain players, who didn't want to sell certain players, and offered them contracts that he was asking for. This is what I'm saying. You've got the same argument on both sides. You give a manager what he wants, or you don't give a manager what he wants. And if it doesn't work out, we point at the people who backed a manager or didn't back a manager. This is all it. It's a results business, isn't it? And this forms our arguments as to how it is. If Rodgers is saying, these are the people I want them on long contracts because I've got this, do the board just say, no, we're not going to do that? And then we lose the players. And that's how they got into the difficulties with PSR, only because of the money they were paying, because we're not a big enough club to be doing what we were trying to do. We had like the second or third biggest wage bill for a season. It was ridiculous. We're not that size of club, but the fans clamour for it. Everybody gets carried away with the success that we're having, so you have to build on it. You can't take a step backwards. You finish 5th a couple of seasons. You need to build on it, which means spending more on players, offering more wages. And then if you can't sustain it, which a club of our size cannot sustain, it falls down around you.
How come Brighton are sustaining it?
For how long? For as long as we have.
Well, they've been doing it for at least 4 years now.
4 years, and we won the league back in 2016. So we've done that over a period of years. Let's have the conversation in 4 years and see how Brighton are. If they're doing it, it's probably because they've learned the lessons that we didn't, to be honest. Because clubs started to look at Leicester and looked at how we were doing things and followed that model, and they've just continued to do it better. I think that's fair.
We've been at this now an hour, and we could be at this another 8 hours, and we still won't come to a final conclusion. I just want to ask you, Locks, because you were saying then about PSR and being a well-run club financially, etc., etc. So if Top was to sell out to Mike Ashley, and love him or hate him, what he did at Newcastle was keep them on a financial, I can't think of the word I'm looking for, but he kept them on the right side. They were financially profitable. They weren't in any debt. So if Top was to sell to Mike Ashley, would you be happy?
Yeah, but that's like saying, would I get what if we got rid of Cooper and brought in Sam Allardyce? Well, no, I don't want that. I don't want Mike Ashley either.
But you can't choose who Top's going to sell to, can you?
No, but one thing that is undoubted, one thing that is undeniable is Top loves Leicester City. I'm not doubting that for 1 second. He loves Leicester City. He would never do that. He would never sell Leicester City to someone like Mike Ashley. I'm in no hesitation about that. So I think that's an irrelevant question. I think that Top, if he was to ever sell, I think he would find the right buyer. And I think he would do his due diligence on that. I'm just saying now, like I've said to you already, if Top changed things, I am more than happy with Top. And I'm not going to say King Power, get out. Not at all. But at the moment, for the last 2-3 years, The only thing that's changed is the manager, nothing else. And that's a worry. No one above the manager.
Changing the manager, and I've said this about Man United, Craig, changing the manager isn't just the thing that's going to work out. You can change your manager and change your manager. It's like building a new house on a swamp. It's always going to sink, and I think Man United are that swamp. But hopefully the new people that come in are sorting those things out. Changing the managers isn't always the answer. But again, if Top gets fed up with this, if he makes that decision, he just wants a quick out, he's just going to sell to whoever makes the best offer, isn't he?
I'm not here to agree with Locks, but I do agree with Locks. I don't think he would. I think they would. This is too much of a passion project. I think it's become a passion project, and they have become part of the family. Every person who has anything to do with Leicester City says what a wonderful club it is. All the people are amazing. You don't then go and throw everybody out and give them an owner who's going to ruin the football club. That's his father's legacy. As I said, he needs to build his own legacy, but that's his father's legacy. I don't think he would ever sell to someone who would look to break the club up or would not run it in the way that it's been run from a business perspective and say, I don't think he would do it. I agree with Locks. I don't think that he would go and sell to that kind of person because, it's almost like giving your daughter away. You want a nice husband for them. You don't just you want her out of the house. You don't just give it to anyone.
Spoken like a true father. With mine, find somebody who's into football. Make sure it's not a bloody Nottingham Forest fan.
We need your bedroom for a sports room. Get out. Whoever comes up. It's not that kind of thing. It's not that kind of thing. It would be like giving his daughter away and finding a good husband, or vice versa, or his son away to a husband, and all those other politically correct statements.
I think the thing that has come out of this show is that, look, we like Top, we love the King Power brand. Yes, they make mistakes, but what they need to do, and that is, if Top can't be here as often as he wants to, then he needs to have somebody here that will do the jobs for him, will make the decisions for him. And even if that's somebody that's above, and I think it probably needs to be somebody that's above Wheeler and Neville and Rudkin and all that literally is his man here, which, let's be honest, we see him at the ground more than the Glazers have ever been at Man United or the Arsenal owners or anything like that. And his dad were always here when they could be. I think the thing that's come out of this is that he needs to not be as loyal, grow a pair, to put it bluntly, and make decisions on Whelan, Neville, Rudkin, and everybody else that's below him.
He needs to walk in them doors and he needs to say to Whelan, he needs to say to Rudkin and whoever else, right, I've hired this guy. He's a footballing man. He's also, business, astute or whatever you want to call it. And he is now in place below me. You now report to him. I don't think Top will do this. I don't think he has the balls to do it. I'm sorry to say. However, that's what he needs to do. Go and poach somebody. Go and find somebody from another club that is run well and bring him over to Leicester City. Could you ever imagine another Premier League team coming in and asking for Rudkin or Whelan? No, it's never going to happen because they're not very good at the jobs. They're not very good at the...
Maybe Southampton at a push.
Well, Whelan might be good at her job in terms of, for King Power, but for Leicester City, I don't believe so. I mean, I heard the other day from a friend who, I think I'm fine saying this, but who works at Seagrave, and he said that, all Whelan... So it was around those rumours. Do you remember a couple of weeks ago when the rumours came out Cooper was going to get sacked?
Yeah.
I messaged him and he said, oh yeah, Whelan's been here all day. She's just been going around finding spots to put the Christmas tree up at Seagrave and organising the Christmas party. And I'm saying, if that's what you've got Whelan doing, if she's involved in them types of decisions, planning the Christmas party, I don't know, man.
I think you're underestimating the importance of feng shui.
And on that note, I don't think we can go anywhere better than that. Craig has been on form today. Guys, thank you so very much. Look, it's been kept nice, and I think, like I said, we'd all love Top to stay, but he just doesn't, like I say, needs to grow a pair and make those decisions and people below him. Locks, look, I put your description, and thank you so very much for coming on last minute as it happened. But thank you so very much. I put your link in the description below, but just tell everybody where they can find you.
Blue tinted glasses, where we don't really wear blue tinted glasses that often at the moment. We try at times, but plenty of stuff, live streams, pre-recorded videos, live call-in show tomorrow, all types of stuff. So come check us out.
Brilliant. Craig, you're on X Twitter. I don't know if you're on Blue Sky yet.
Yeah, on X Twitter you can find me just at Craig Bird, and on Blue Sky at Craig Bird 1.
Guys, thank you very, very much. Go and enjoy the rest of your Sunday, what's left of it. Have a nice roast or whatever you're having, and we'll all get together again soon, I'm sure. Thanks very much, guys.
Cheers, Locks.
Bye. Cheers, Craig.
Thanks very much to both Locks and to Craig. Well, I must admit that Craig's back in again. that wasn't planned. I'm not a morning person. I keep saying this. I'm not a morning person. I'm pressing the wrong knobs, and don't anybody go anywhere with that whatsoever. But thanks very much to Locks. Thanks very much to Craig. It's been a really good show. Really do appreciate it. Go and give Locks your support. He doesn't need, he's doing fantastic on his new show. Follow Craig if you want to talk sensible football rather than talk to me. And we will be back. Tomorrow at 7 o'clock, where we will be doing the review show. We'll be looking all round at the weekend's games, some of which will be kicking off in about 45 minutes. Leicester-Chelsea is obviously the main one that we'll be covering. Manchester City-Tottenham we chose as our second match. Not a bad choice, that. We'll have a video review of Arsenal-Forest and a video review of Southampton-Liverpool, which is the 2 o'clock game. So do stick with us. Follow us. We are on Blue Sky, on most things, to be honest with you. LTID TV is where you can find us on any of the... oh, God, what's gone on here? Any of the social media settings is where you can find us. And just to prove it, there you go. Mr. Blue Sky, ELO. Thanks very much. See you tomorrow at 7 o'clock. Give us a follow, like to the video, subscribe to the channel, and give us a follow, as I say, on any of the socials. Take care, guys. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thanks very much for joining us. Good night or good afternoon.
Thanks for watching. These videos are tremendous. You'd better like them too, or I'll be back.
This podcast is proud to be part of the TalkSport Fan Network. TalkSport. Powered by fans.
That will conclude this evening's entertainment.
The TalkSport Fan Network is the ultimate on-demand destination for the UK's best fan-led football podcasts,
including Leicester Till I Die, independent analysis and reaction for the Foxes faithful.
The TalkSport Fan Network.
Unbeatable club-dedicated content created by the fans, for the fans.
Follow the podcast on the TalkSport Fan Network.